Okay. Please do that paper. Please do that paper. When you are doing that paper, follow my instructions, right? Take exactly 3 hours and 15 minutes. 15 minutes for reading time. Okay. Uh, please complete that paper fully and upload your answer script to the same group. Upload your answer script to the same group. I will give you comment on that paper, the way that you write your answers, plus and minuses, all those things I will tell you. Fine. So there are only 2 or 3 students in that group. So please upload in the group itself. Okay. Right. Today, heading right down, risk of material misstatements. Audit risk. The question verbs are audit risk or risk of material misstatement. Let's see how to tackle this type of questions, how to handle this type of questions, right? What is exactly mean by these questions, right? So if you take audit risk, some past papers they use the verb audit risk, some past papers they use the verb risk of material misstatement. So actually, if you look at audit risk is chances of providing inappropriate opinion. What is audit risk? Audit risk is chances of providing inappropriate opinion, that because of 2 reasons. One is client side reasons. The other one is auditor's side reasons. If you take client side reason, students, if you take client side reason, right, that you all know that comes from inherent risk and control risk. Inherent risk and control risk. Now I'll explain most of your 99.9% of your audit risk questions or case study. 99.9% audit risk case studies are inherent risk case studies. 99.9% audit risk case studies are inherent risk case studies. Right? What is inherent risk? How this can be tested in your exam? It's like this. If I take this inherent risk, I can say risk arise in the first instance before testing related controls. Before testing related controls. Before testing related controls, the risk arise in the first instance we call inherent risk. The risk arise in the first instance we call what risk? Inherent risk. Actually, students, if I take inherent risk, as I told you, 90% of your audit risk questions are inherent risk. 2 things create inherent risk. One is complexity in nature. Nature complexity. When nature is more complex, that create inherent risk. Right? For example, accepting a client first time. Accepting a client first time. For audit firm, the nature is automatically complex because we don't have knowledge of business related to that particular entity. Or else the entity operates highly regulated environment. For example, pharmaceutical industry or aviation industry. Obviously, the risk is very high. Right. Second aspect, this is what mostly tested, complexity in transactions. Complexity in transactions. Transaction become complex. Two situations. One is assertion complication. Two is standard complication. See, when there is an assertion complication, or standard complication, financial statements are prepared by management. When they prepare financial statement, there is an assertion related problems, or there is a standard related problem. These both situations might create your transaction more complex. So when transaction is more complex, inherent risk will arise. So this is what highly tested in your case studies. So most of the time when a case study is given, you should focus complexity in transaction basis, because most of the cases are transaction based. And if you look at this type of transaction based one, either assertion complication or standard complication is given. Therefore, when you are reading case study, you should read with the perspective of assertion. You should read with the perspective of standard. So you should read with the perspective of assertion. You should read with the perspective of what? Standard. Both will create inherent risk. For example, I'll take assertion complication. Right. They are telling a scenario. Let's say like this. Company year end 31st December 2012. 31st December 2012. Company's year end is 31st December 2012. Entity operates continuous production. They are telling what? Entity operate what production? Continuous production. This is what they mentioned. Right. Okay. Now I'll give 5 minutes time. What is the audit risk here? Entity operates continuous production. Tell me. I'll give 5 minutes. Think and type your answer. What is the audit risk? Entity operates continuous production. What is the audit risk? What is the audit risk? What will be the audit risk? See here. If you get a case study like this or case study line like this, you should think whether it is an inherent risk, whether it is a control risk, or whether it is a detection risk. Normally, this creates inherent risk because it's related to a transaction. Because when we are doing continuous production, what will happen? Inventory include material work in progress balance. Because students, let's say when we cease production, normally companies what they do is closer to year end they cease production. Closer to year end is 31st December. Let's say 25th of December they cease production. Cease production means they stop production. Once they stop or cease production, raw materials will not converted into work in progress. But the work in progress is converted into finished good. By that, what will happen at the year end, 31st of December, your inventory is in the form of raw material or your inventory is in the form of finished good. Your inventory is in the form of raw material or your inventory is in the form of finished good. Either it's in the form of raw material or either it is in the form of finished good. Both are easy to value. Let's say your inventory is in the form of raw material, it is easy to value. Suppose if your inventory is in the form of finished good, it is easy to value. When it is possible. If you cease production, it is possible. But if you not cease production, if you go for continuous production, inventory include material work in progress. So this will create a valuation problem. This will create what problem? Valuation problem. For balance sheet items, valuation is an assertion. Valuation is a assertion. Therefore, the inventory, this particular case is assertion complicated problem. Assertion complicated problem. This is one case possible. When it comes to standard complication, in your exam, okay, before moving to that, just copy this first. Just copy this, then I'll come to that part. Will there be a cutoff problem? Yes, cutoff problem also there. There is a cutoff problem also. Because inventory is a P&L and balance sheet element that will create a cutoff problem. Right? So copy this. So when you are getting this type of questions, always things from the assertion perspective and always things from the standard perspective. Copy this. Right. Now, students, standard complication. Sometimes inherent risk might arise because of complexity in the transaction. So transaction complexity, how can be tested in the exam? Normally advanced audit and assurance papers, it can be tested in two perspectives. One is confirmed misstatements. The other one is possible misstatements. So one is confirmed, the other one is possible. So what is confirmed misstatements and what is possible misstatements? See, confirmed misstatements, if I take, right, they might say like example, research cost capitalized. Research cost capitalized. Possible misstatements, example, management revalued assets. See how to differentiate confirmed misstatement and possible misstatement. Confirmed misstatements means non-compliance with the standard. That is confirmed. Research cost as per IAS 38 intangible asset, you can't capitalize. If you capitalize means it is wrong. So that is very clear. When you are writing answers, if you have standard knowledge, clearly you can write down that point. Second one is possible misstatement, which means it is not actually breach of a standard, it is not actual non-compliance of a standard, but there is a possibility of misstatement. For example, management revalued assets. Management revalued assets. Right. So that case, if you are not revalued, there is a possibility of mistake. Right. So this is also possible. This can be tested. This also possible can be tested. Mostly you will get possible misstatement. Mostly you get possible misstatements. Copy this source. Now students, when you are doing a question, as I told you, 90% come from complexity transaction. That can be an assertion issue or standard issue, right? Standard, mostly it is a possible mistake. This is what tested in your exam, right? Control risk, very rare. I don't think they might test control risk, right? Control risk means control activity not met control objective. This create risk of material misstatement. Control activity equal to control objective, then less risk of material mistake. So when control activity not met control objective, that create control deficiencies, by that audit risk arise. So that is not tested most of the time. And auditor's side reason, I can say sampling risk, non-sampling risk. Sampling risk and non-sampling risk. Okay, those things are not tested. So no need to teach theory here. So try to understand, most of your questions falls within transaction complexity only. Right? Copy this. Copy this. Then for audit risk questions, when it comes to risk of material misstatements, risk of material misstatement means, students, client side reasons. So if the question verb is risk of material misstatement, that case study include inherent risk and control risk, mostly inherent risk. Suppose if the audit question verb is audit risk, the question verb is audit risk, that include risk of material misstatement and auditor side reason, sampling, non-sampling risk as well. So that is broader. Right. Now let's see how to write answer. For the verb is either risk of material misstatement or audit risk. How to write answer. See, from the case study, identify key issue. Identify key issue. The problem should be identified. Right. So when we are talking about these key issues, students, as I told you, the issue is related to financial statements. Issues are related to financial statements. And issues are related to mostly complexity in transaction. Issues are mostly related to complexity in transactions. And this can be standard complication or assertion complication. Standard complication or assertion complication. After that, you should clearly explain. You should, if it is a assertion issue, you should explain assertion perspective. If it is a standard issue, you should explain standard perspective. That is very much important, right? So after identifying this issue, accounting standard or assertion explanation should be given. Accounting standard or assertion explanation. Accounting standard or assertion explanation is required. You should clearly give standard explanation or assertion explanation. Standard or assertion. So if it is a standard problem, explain the standard treatment. So standard explanation means standard treatment. If it is an assertion, then you should explain what assertion and sort of things. Third one, you should assess materiality as well. So while you are writing answer, you should discuss about materiality. You should discuss about materiality. For example, that you might study this in your ISA 320, materiality by nature, materiality by amount, all those of sort of things you should assess the materiality. Fourth one, response to audit risk. Response to audit risk is simply procedures. Response to audit risk is simply the procedures. That is, we call planning procedure. These four matters you should include within your answer. So normally when you are writing an audit risk, you should put a heading. You can put any heading, but it should be related to the transaction, that particular issue. Then you can include these 4 points within your answer. That is more than enough. And don't forget to write one thing, how it's going to impact financial state. How it's going to impact financial state, right? Copy. This is the answer structure. This is the answer structure. Copy this. When the question say to prioritize the audit risk, is it done as a different paragraph or at the end? When the question says to also prioritize the audit risk, is it done as a different paragraph or at the end? No, normally prioritize the audit risk means, in the sense, what you should do is, all the audit risk is not equally important. That is, we call planning and risk assessment. At the end only you should prioritize a different paragraph. Is that clear? Because To prioritize, you should apply professional judgment. Right, that is comes under professional judgment. That is used as a separate paragraph. At the end, you can prioritize with your arguments. Why you prioritize them. Is that clear? Right. So this is the answer structure. Don't forget this structure, because most of the students, they are writing answers, but you might not score full marks. So when you know the structure or the scope of the answer, it is easy to score full marks. It is easy to score full marks. Right? Now, risk of material misstatement or audit risk with ARP. In the past paper, you might get risk of material misstatement or audit risk with ARP as well. What is ARP, audit risk questions? Normally, audit risk questions or risk of material misstatement questions, it's given in the case study plus financial statement financial statement extracts, both given. Then students, let's say some past papers, mostly audit and assurance, advanced audit and assurance past papers, they might give you a case study, discussion of finance director with the finance director or CEO, chief financial officer. And also they might give a financial statement extracts. So extracts can be income statement or extract can be balance sheet. That is also provided. So in your question, if you find out if there is any financial statement figures extracts provided to you, then it's an ARP question, because here case study include explanations where we can use our professional judgment to assess risk. Professional judgment to assess risk. From the case study, yes, we can do that. Financial statement extracts, if it is given, here we should perform analytical review procedures. We should perform analytical review procedures to identify risk. So what is analytical review procedures? For that, we can do ratio analysis, that is comparing current year figure with the previous year figure, that we can do here. Or else we can do a trend analysis, and also we can do a reasonableness test. We can do what? A reasonableness test. What is reasonableness test? For example, let's see, sales increase by 50%. Cost of sales decrease by 100%, which means sales or cost of sales misstated. So likewise, you can perform analytical review procedures in order to identify the risk. But the main concern, this type of questions, you should, when you are writing answer, need to combine case study line with ARP. You should need to combine case study with ARP. Right? I'll tell you how to work that. First copy this. This is most probably tested. Most of the time this is tested where case study and the financial statements together, it is tested in the exams, right? So copy this, then I'll tell you how to connect with an example. Copy this. Copy this. See here, for example, I'll tell you, for example, see here. In the case study line, you should understand these relationships. Then it is easy to draft your answer. Because advanced audit and assurance, the main problem is not writing answer. Because all the students, they almost go through all the subjects, and this is the last subject most of their papers, right? And SBR knowledge is there, so they know standards very well. The problem is not writing the answer. And also when it comes to practicing questions, students take more convenient time, like they are not accepting the time pressure, just they take 3 4 hours to do one question, and comfortably you are preparing for your exams. But when it comes to exam, you don't have enough time to plan your answer, so you get stuck there because you want to write, but you don't have time to write. So whatever you want to write, if you write, the problem is question number one, you can finish. Question number two, halfway, the time 3 hours and 15 minutes over. So you don't have enough time. Time management only problem. How to come out from this time management issue? Because normally, if you want to pass this paper, minimum 80 marks you should write. But if you have a clear idea about the paper structure and what sort of things can be tested, if you have clear knowledge about it, it is very comfortable to draft your answer. It is very comfortable to draft your answer. For example, let's say in this case study, they are telling like, okay, uh, high level of competition, result, significant reduction of selling price and more marketing expense incurred. That is about the case study line. No more marketing expenses incurred. Prime. The same time, students, if you look at ARP, analytical review procedure. Let's say you did a ratio analysis. ARP. In your ARP, analytical review procedure, what happened? Your inventory days, if you take your inventory days from 50 days to 78 days increased. So when your inventory days are increasing, that is one finding from ARP. Case study, if you look at, yes, they are telling that high level of competition result significant reduction of selling price and more marketing expenses. So when your selling price is significantly reducing and marketing expenses are significantly increasing, that create cost NRV issue. Both are focusing on one thing. What is that issue? Cost NRV issue. See, your estimated selling price reduced, estimated selling cost increase, so cost NRV might be lesser than cost. Inventory days also increasing. When your NRV is lesser than cost, you are unable to sell your inventory. No, because it's very expensive, inventory cost is overstated, so unable to sell in the market, so your inventory days are increasing. Both arguments are focusing on the same problem. So when you are writing answer, you can't write first point as a separate audit risk, second point as a separate audit risk. You should combine both together and write the answer. You should combine both together. So the topic may be NRV issue, and you should include both ARP findings along with the case study. Both ARP findings along with the case study. Right. So this is the point that you should understand, how to combine both ARP findings with the case study line, how to find ARP line with the case study line. That combination is important. Without have that combination, no connection, it is not easy to draft your answer. If you draft your answer, it is may not be correct also. Right? Copy this. Copy this. So most of the time you will get this type of ARP questions as well.
Daddy, we already sent an we already sent the three photos, which is nice in okay.
Right. Now students, this is about this risk of material misstatement question. The same similar type answer structure question is matters to be considered. If you look at this particular case study, if you look at this particular case study, see, see matters to be considered, audit evidence. Right. So if you look at questions, the same explanation, even if you take the first question, see here, audit risk. So it include what? Simply, it include both inherent risk, control risk, and detection risk. All three included. And if you look at this case, the case includes what? Financial statements as well. Financial statements, or you should perform what? ARP. You need to perform ARP. Right. Now, let's move to another question that is similar answer structure that we follow. That is, Matters to be considered audit evidence. Matters to be considered and audit evidence. Right. See, before auditor, when it comes to gathering evidence that you might studied as source of audit evidence, comes under ISA 500. Source of audit evidence, which is comes under ISA 500 standard. There are two sources of audit evidence. One is test of control and substantive procedures. Substantive procedures, test of detail, analytical review procedures. Right. So matters to be considered means that include risk of material misstatement. So risk of material misstatement, as I told you, complexity in transaction. But here audit risk and here the difference is audit risk complexity in the transaction is possible because of what? Assertion and the standard. But here it will be a standard complication. It is only what? Standard complication. So it can be a possible misstatement, or it can be a confirmed mistake. Either possible or confirmed misstatement. So how audit risk is differ from risk of material misstatement? Risk matters to be considered question. Matters to be considered question also include risk of material misstatement, but only because of complexity in the transactions. Only because of what? Complexity in the transaction. Standard complications tested. So standard complication can be a possible misstatement or confirmed mistake. So this how the case study is developed. This how the case study is developed. This how the case study is arranged. This how the case study is developed, and this how the case study is arranged. Normally, if you get this type of question, students, right, matters to be considered, they might ask matters to be considered an audit evidence, or they might ask matters to be considered and procedures. They might ask matters to be considered and procedures. So you should know what sort of matters to be considered. Normally auditors consider the matter which is high material. So don't try to write all the matters that you take as material things. Normally auditor focused on the matters which is highly material. Normally in your questions also they give cases, that cases which are material to financial statements. So when you are writing answer, how to approach? So how to approach? Number one, matters to be considered. Right? I'll tell you before that, copy this. So this is how it's differ. So matters to be considered is also to some extent similar to what? Audit risk. But audit risk include every aspect. This include only standard complication. Copy this. Now let's see how to write answers. Matters to be considered if you get a question like this. Normally, concentrate. This question will be part A most of the time. Along with that, as a continuation, part B, impact to audit report is the question. So this matter you should consider while planning performing the audit. If it is not resolved, what will be the impact to audit opinion? That will be the next question. Therefore, this particular question is linked with performance stage and the reporting stage. It is linked with performance stage and the reporting stage. So matters to be considered. Matters to be considered, if you look at, first we should take key issue. After that, you should assess materiality. Then you should take correct standard treatment here. Correct standard treatment. Suppose if it is a confirmed misstatement, suppose if it is confirmed misstatement, for that, correct journal entry. Correct journal entry. What you can do for that? Research cost is capitalized. It should be reversed. Right. And possible opinion. See, this particular portion, possible opinion, I forgot to mention one, that is impact. Similar to audit report, I'm sorry, audit risk, impact to financial statement, and possible opinion. If that particular misstatement is not resolved, if that particular issue is not resolved, what will be the impact? What will be the impact? That is also you need to mention. But suppose if part B is implication to audit report, like this. Here see. Part B is implication to audit report. See here. Discuss the impact to audit report if those adjustments are not made. Then no need to write impact. Then no need to write opinion. If the question asks only matters to be considered and audit evidence or audit procedures, then you should write the possible opinion as well. If they ask implication to audit report as a separate question, then no need to write. Then no need to write possible opinion. Copy this. But students, so they ask evidence. They ask evidence. When you are writing evidence, there is a problem. Normally, how we gather evidence? ISA 500 evidence we gathered by perform test of control. By perform substantive procedures. By performing test of control and substantive procedures, we gather audit evidence. Now, they ask us to write evidence. Don't write procedures. Then it is wrong. Normally, students, what they do is when question is evidence, they write procedures. They write procedures. Don't do that. After performing procedures, what you got? For example, let's say there is an issue related to the rights and obligation of motor vehicle. Then evidence is what? Copy of vehicle registration book. So vehicle registration book, a copy of vehicle registration book is the evidence. Vehicle registration book is the evidence. But try to understand one thing here. Along with this, you should write the purpose of that evidence. Why you gathered that evidence? The purpose need to clearly communicate. For example, copy of the vehicle registration book which confirms legal ownership of the vehicle. Which confirm legal ownership of the vehicle. That purpose should be included within your answer. That's how you should write the evidence. Don't write procedures to evidence. Don't write procedures to evidence. This is how you should write. Suppose if they ask matters to be considered and audit procedures. Sometimes they might ask matters to be considered and procedures. Then you can write substantive procedures for this. Then you can write substantive procedures for this. Then no problem. But if the verb is evidence, don't write procedures. The verb is evidence, don't write procedures. Copy this. Right. So that is about matters to be considered. That is about matters to be considered and the audit risk. Those are the two questions I want to discuss. Please complete this question paper, and better to send this question paper's answers before this Wednesday. I will comment and I will put a text in the WhatsApp group. Don't share anywhere else. Please put in the same expert group in the itself. Right? Okay, with that point, I'll stop for the day. Right? Thank you.